Some people have asked me what was the Marvel event that botched, because there's been a lot of Marvel events, easily more than one a year, and for a while they were pretty powerful. I think Civil War, sold like crazy, and it was seen as a huge success. And then you had Secret Invasion, which was not. I mean, if you look back on it, was not as powerful as Civil War, but it sold great. It set up a lot of things. Then you had the whole Dark Reign, you had Siege, you had a lot of Marvel had really kind of stepped into their own. I forgot House of M. House of M came before Civil War, and you had that kind of trio of House of M, Civil War, Secret Invasion, and those three events did really well. Kind of set Marvel up to really kind of own this whole space. And then came Fear itself. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Sometimes people ask me, what was the event that kind of collapsed Marvel's track record? Because for a while they were the company of events, and the events were surefire. If you were a comic shop, you knew that you could order the events, you could order them strong, they would sell out, they would do well. And as I mentioned, you had House of M, you had Civil War, which was just a beast, and then you had Secret Invasion, which did really really well. And so you had a really good run of events. And then it was announced that Matt Fraction, who was a rising star at Marvel at the time, he had done Punisher War Journal, and then he was doing more and more. He was about to go on to Thor. I believe he was going into Thor, I think, and he had Iron Man that he had a successful run with. Anyway, it was seen that Matt Fraction was kind of Marvel's new golden boy. They were giving him books. He brought something special to the books. Is kind of how he was billed. And so they gave him Fear itself, and the marketing for Fear itself was fairly strong. And remember, Marvel as a company is not the best at marketing. They typically don't do it. These things kind of fly under the radar. This isn't a news story. They never have done it fairly well. But what they did do was they basically put out a lot of who are the worthy, and it showed kind of what looked like familiar characters, but with hammers. And the Stuart Immonen was Immonen. Anyway, he was on the art. He was also seen as a really strong artist. It definitely had some A players on it, and the concept that we were going to get Thor level kind of bad guys with hammers was intriguing. It sounded like a good hook. It was something Thor centric. We hadn't had a real Thor event in a while, and I should rephrase. We had just gone through Siege, which dealt with Asgard, but this is going to be Thor cutting loose against a bunch of superpower villains. And there was at least some teasing of the Juggernaut, and Sin, the Red Skull's daughter, was going to have one, and the Thing, and the Hulk, and the Absorbing Man, and so you had some really kind of unique characters that were going to get these hammers and kind of level them up quite a bit. And really make them kind of global threats. And so the marketing, the interviews ahead of time were really good. People are kind of excited about what would happen, and it fit. It also was a good kind of straightforward pitch. At the time, they'd come out of Dark Reign. They were in the kind of the new hero realm. Steve Rogers was serving as the Avengers chairman, and there are aspects of the titles that were, it was just, it looked like a big, serious threat. And this was right at the beginning, by the way, when Marvel was trying to de-emphasize their villains, and really, they were turning into more jokey, kind of campy villains. And so it was a good. So the comic starts out well enough, some old Red Skull history and some Nazi stuff, and Baron Zemo was hanging out, and Sin basically comes across some directions for this hammer. She unleashes it, and this awakens the Serpent, which is kind of this mysterious, super evil character that spreads fear. And Odin, who's in Oklahoma at this point, senses that there's a problem, and he basically is going to like retreat the Asgardians back to another dimension, out to Asgard, to space, to wherever, off Earth. And then they were going to raise it from a distance because the Serpent would be a huge monumental threat. And it was revealed this was his brother Cole, and it was it was some good Asgardian mythology. So far so good. We get a big ass threat. We got hammers. When the serpent awakens, he sends 7 hammers into the earth, and they're going to be picked up by people. And sure enough, Titania gets one, and the Hulk gets one, and who else? The Juggernaut. Right off the bat, I'm forgetting something. Anyway, they get these hammers, and they immediately get transformed to pretty badass versions. Kind of like what you see Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo making a big deal out of metalizing certain characters. This is kind of metal before then. I mean, the characters were all beefed out, look crazy. And then they had these hammers, and they were going to just go out and create crazy damage. Great Gargoyle gets one, and then he just wipes out all of Paris, like everybody. Everybody turns to stone, and then he starts throwing Iron Man through like the bodies, and it's just destruction. It was neat to see kind of these characters really truly cut loose, because in Civil War it's heroes against heroes. In Secret Invasion, it was heroes against the Skrulls. But the way that event was written, and this is a problem I think Marvel has, is that when these big acts are coming, they'll show like a page or two of destruction. But it's always kind of the same thing. A bunch of people are blowing up, Times Square, but it doesn't really show. It doesn't look like major things are happening. Well, in this one, Stuart Immonen was amazing at making the world look like it was completely coming unglued. Like things were definitely getting effed up in here, and it was impressive. And then the Thing gets kind of consumed by the hammer, and this was cool because he was we'd seen a lot of events of including all the Dark Reign stuff. There's a lot of like villains working behind the shadows and subterfuge and all the rest. This is just good old action. So what could go wrong? Well, by the second issue, it started to go horribly wrong. For one thing, the writing was very, very shallow. And I think people who were into Map-Fraction via the things like Iron Fist and some of the more kind of cerebral takes he was doing on characters at the time, some more in-depth stuff, was kind of revealed to be this was a Michael Bay level popcorn. Not a lot of complexity, people blowing up, and it wore out its welcome very fast. And then Captain America Bucky is basically impaled. The comic promised to have a shock on ending in every issue, some major shocks. And the first one comes with Bucky getting impaled by Sin, and he's killed basically. And this is a big deal, and it just fell kind of flat. It felt like here's the first death, and then we're promised more deaths. And I think that's a bad plan for any kind of event where they're going into it. They're saying we're going to kill people for you. It no longer feels like an organic kind of story element. It feels like I don't know, just didn't play well. So that goes on, and then they're blowing up stuff, and the Asgardian Thor's fighting with his dad, and kind of classic stuff. And they finally figured out, okay, we're gonna make some Uru enchanted armor and weapons, kind of blessed by Odin, and in order to kind of give penance to Odin or to curry his favor, Stark gets super drunk because that's supposed to be a moment. I mean, it's supposed to be impressive, but it came out cheesy, and it didn't really matter. And then they get like Wolverine's claws and Iron Man's armor and kind of a bunch of different pieces of their weapons. She-Hulk gets a big sword, as I recall. Or sorry, no, Red She-Hulk gets a big sword, and they go and they just start trashing stuff. And they have a big battle with the villains, and then the people of Broxton, Oklahoma, kind of stand up, and they take a stand as well, and it's showing that people can't live in fear. And I mean, there's a point in there somewhere, but it was an event that came in with a lot of steam. I think the energy was really strong for it coming in. The idea of kind of heroes being turned into their dark selves and causing mayhem and chaos. It ended with a whimper. Somewhere around issue 3 or 4, it was clear it wasn't selling through in comic shops, and it did not catch people's attention, and it fell flat. The other thing that didn't help it at the time was that I think, I remember Bendis was doing a bunch of crossovers in the Avengers titles, and that was one of the major books that was supposed to cross over both Avengers and New Avengers, and he used them to kind of highlight a romance between Hawkeye and Spider-Woman that was discarded pretty quickly thereafter. And then a bunch of his issues featured just characters in kind of a reality TV show setting talking about what was going on, but not it was like over here you had Fraction doing this kind of big widescreen blow it up event, and then the books that Bendis did to tie in were kind of more of the oral history of the Avengers, and it was a lot of talking with blank backgrounds and no actual comic, and that turned people off pretty hard. I would say there was a definite so a lot of that stuff just didn't take. And then to cap it all off, the storyline ends with Thor basically sacrificing his life to defeat the Serpent, and ending this threat. And so Thor dies. And then they do these 3 follow-up issues, which were going to be one for Iron Man, one for Thor, one for Captain America, kind of the trinity of the Avengers. And the Captain America one, it's revealed that Bucky isn't dead, that they saved his life, and he's going to go back into hiding as a Winter Soldier and give up the identity, and Steve Rogers will become just, legit Cap again. Which was both kind of a blow to all the work they'd done to build up Bucky in that role, and also it was like they killed somebody off. People were used to characters coming back to life. I mean, Bucky himself came back to life, but he came back to life literally the month after Fear Itself ended in an epilogue issue. And then in the Thor comic, Thor comes back to life, same thing, right away, kind of in that same issue. And then an Iron Man, they have Iron Man being mad at Odin, and the people in Paris coming back to life and kind of erasing that. So it was a weird, Marvel events, and people who follow those are used to things kind of getting reset back to normal at some point after an event. The event does the big shocking thing, and then there's some aftermath, and then eventually that stuff's undone. And Fear Itself was like an immediate undo. Like they just immediately erased the event, and that was peculiar. I think is probably the best way to put it. Over time, most people just tried to distance themselves, I think, from Fear Itself as fast as possible. One of the big storyline elements was that Red She-Hulk had her magic sword, her guru-infused sword, which is going to be super epic, powerful, and she kept it. The other heroes returned their weapons to the dwarves and to Asgard, but she kept hers. And this is going to be kind of a thing. Now she had a sword kind of with some of the same powers of Thor, but it never really showed up again, or at least I don't recall. Maybe it showed up somewhere. Did they ever do anything with this sword? Is it still floating around somewhere? Hey, Al Ewing, Master of Continuity, you wanna kind of explain what happened there, or maybe I missed it. Let me know in the comments. I might have missed it. Where did this sword go? Anyway, they made a big deal for keeping it. I'm just saying. Anyway, so as events go, that was kind of the big correction in Marvel Land, where people were used to their events really selling, and then it didn't. And it definitely tempered the events that would follow. And it took a while for Marvel to kind of get back to a big head of steam. They would keep doing events, don't get me wrong, but they definitely kind of backed off the pedal a little bit, made a little bit more of an effort. And I think the crossovers, there was a ton of crossovers with Fear Itself. And we saw a ton with War of the Realms too. It's like, but it took them a while to get back there. They learned their lesson for a couple of years. This was 2011, by the way. This was 9 years ago. If you think about how crazy it was that Matt Fraction was Marvel's Golden Boy doing an event that bombed in 9 years ago. It's a weird thing to wrap your head around. I'm just saying. It is. Anyway, did you love this event, hate this event, remember this event? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, click the bell for notification, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.